Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Swimming Parent Support live stream from Propulsion Swimming. I'm your host, Scott, and with me, as always, is my good friend Dan, and our supporting act on these live streams, AP Race Club's Kev Pickard. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Yeah, all good. I'm actually looking forward to this one. I'm going to be learning quite a lot, to be honest with you. I feel like I'm going to be like everyone else. I haven't got a clue what's about to happen, so I'm actually looking forward to it a lot.
Yep, same here. Going to be really, really exciting. I'm sure we're going to get lots of great questions in from people, and we're going to be picking Hannah's brain for the next hour.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So that kind of gives away our special guest. So on today's show, we are joined by Hannah Miley, who is going to help us talk about female health within the sport of swimming. Hannah, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it. Should be interesting to see what the questions come through, and I'm here to help out as best I can. First step in learning a bit more about it is opening up the conversation.
Definitely. So for anyone who is joining us for the first time, we started these monthly shows to give parents a platform to come together, discuss or ask anything and everything about their swimmer's journey. So everyone here knows that parents play a vital role within the sport of swimming, and previously we felt they were a little under-supported. So for this live stream, it's designed to be interactive, question and answer. So please put your comments, your questions into the YouTube chat, and we will bring them up for all to discuss. Hannah, I'm going to kick things off by asking, why is it important that we're talking about the topic of female health today?
I think it's hugely important because talking about especially menstruation is almost one of the last taboos I feel in sport. It's always hush hush, it's women's problems. It's, just deal with it. It's fine. Just push it under the rug sort of thing. And I feel that, in the recent years, a lot of athletes have actually been able to start talking more openly about it. There's a lot more research and study going behind it. Because male and female athletes, whilst hormonally we are the same in that we've all got 7 types of hormones, different levels, our bodies do function very, very differently. So, if you're in a mixed training group, girls are going to respond differently to boys. And I think it is so vital to understand that a little bit more, and actually how we can help support it so that we can retain, more girls in sport, because their potential, there's a lot of untapped potential there. Not just for their current situation for performance in sport, but also longevity and future health as well. There's a lot out there that I think could be learned. I know certainly from experience when I was 15, the research wasn't the same as it is now. So it's really exciting that there is more information and knowledge and people wanting to find out more. So how we can, move on and develop female sport.
You still say you're learning stuff as well, still now.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. It's pretty much, I was 30 when I found out a huge chunk about female health that I was completely oblivious to. I thought, by the age of 30, I should pretty much know what's going on with my body. And it wasn't until going through lockdown, I got in touch with Georgie Brunavals from Fitter Women. And I was literally just left in silence when she was explaining all the little things that was happening, little bits that I could relate to. And I was going, yeah, I remember, oh, is that why that happens? Oh, okay. And there were things that I could help with and things that I thought was normal that actually isn't normal, and things that I could have maybe sorted out or identified, or as we call the red flags. And I didn't realize actually how important it was. And there's a great article out there by Bobby Clay. Highly recommend it. She's a track athlete, and she went out to the Nike Oregon project, and she was basically told having period was just a no-go. You weren't allowed to. It was a really bad thing. So she didn't have a period for several years, and the health impact that's had on her, she's got osteoporosis. I think she's going to struggle to have kids, and the long-term impact that's had is massive. So, it's so important to know and understand female health so that we can guide our young girls coming through, guide current athletes as well, so that we can safeguard them and help them have a happier future in whatever it is that they choose to do.
Definitely. So let's we've got a question that came in beforehand. Let's start right at the start. So how do you prepare your child for periods and swimming?
So it does come down to a bit of education. I think generally being able to talk about it, so normalizing the conversation. But I think the key thing is not necessarily talking at your child. It's actually being open to listening. So that communication and understanding what they're going through, what they're feeling, answering any questions that you can. Another way as well is the different types of products you can have, normalizing, whether it's tampons or pads or period pants or a diva cup. Like, there are so much more products out there. So I think as a parent, don't be afraid to go out and find out as much information as you can. There are some really great books out there. I highly recommend Dr. Stacey Sims' book called Roar. She specifically looks at female health through athletic performance. So she goes through menstruation, pregnancy, perimenopause, and all the different reasons for the different stages. There's Maisie Hill Period Power, which again breaks down what actually happens within the body, and she describes it actually really quite nicely with some visual effects. She describes your four stages within your cycle as your seasons. You've got your winter, spring, autumn, and summer. And you can kind of relate to it a little bit more. So trying to prepare your child, offer as much information. I know when I was growing up, I was given a book. I was given a book and a box of tampons and basically just sat and read it. Each parent's going to have their own methodology with what they feel comfortable with. So being as parents, don't be afraid to ask the questions. We have the power of social media. As I say, the research and the data out there is a lot more. There's a lot more support groups like on Instagram, Facebook groups as well, that you can ask the questions. So I think it's being able to go on the journey for yourself as well as your child, but trying to not bring menstruation in a negative light, because I always find it's one of those things that's like, oh, you're going to have it once every month, it's going to be terrible, you can't wear white trousers, you can't do this, you can't do that. The word can't seems to come up a lot. Try and rephrase your language so that it's you can do things. It's not an inconvenience. And just try and keep the conversations quite positive.
I like that. That's a really powerful message. Is there a sort of time where parents should start preparing?
I don't really think so. I think it's just when they feel it's right. Girls can start their periods from as young as 8, and then they can start it as late as 15. So I guess it depends on school, what education there is through the schooling, what education I guess the parents have and the knowledge and understanding. I think there's no limit to when you can ask or start, kind of having the conversation. I think it's important to maybe around the age of 8, possibly, because as I say, if they start at 8, it's important for them to kind of know and understand. But even that, by then, it could be a couple of years after the age of 8, so at least they're aware, and it's not going to be something that's going to be frightening for them as well.
Yeah, there must be massive effects with it with swimming. I mean, how do girls deal with it when it comes to swimming, being in the pool, etc., etc.?
Yeah, because we are exposed. We're in costumes, and going through puberty as a young kid is hard. Everything's changing. Your body shape's changing. You've got longer limbs. Body shape's going to be becoming maybe more curvy. Our hips develop. Chest develops. You're going to start getting hair in like undesirable places, and that's where the social media aspect really does impact body image, because you've got this set way of some of these amazing models and different people look a certain way, and that self-esteem starts coming in a little bit more to play. Are these girls affected? Some girls, like I know when I was younger, I wasn't fussed whether I had hairy legs or not, but I know some girls are. So all these different changes are going to bring on lots of different emotions. Skin as well, swimmers, girls who come in with their faces colored in makeup because they felt they needed their appearance to look good after training, dive in, and then sometimes their skin would get really spotty because they've not washed their makeup off, or, there's lots of little things like that. But yeah, in swimming terms, there are lots of things, because I can admit I've come out of the pool and like I have blood running down my leg, and it's very, very obvious if something like that happens. And I was lucky enough that I did have a couple of teammates who, they wouldn't say anything. They would either hand me a towel or they nudge me and just be like, Hannah, you might want to run to the toilet, and it was fine. But that in itself, it can start creating that negative experience, which then makes you feel a little bit more alone. It can make you feel a little bit uncomfortable and embarrassed about it. So it's trying to get that fine balance. And that's why I think being able to be open and talking about it, or listening, as I say, when you're on your period, your mood swings can go and you can feel a little bit down and a bit more self-conscious as well. So having that ability to be there for your child, to talk to if they have any issues, or offer that support, I think is key. But yeah, as swimmers and gymnasts and anybody who's in a leotard, I think it's tough, but there are products out there that can help and hopefully allow you for a bit better experience.
What are the other top products? Just you
So-
mention them quickly to start with. Let's take a bit of a
Yeah.
deep dive.
Yeah, I do have some. And the funny thing is I actually kind of wish I had these as well when I was younger. So I was always told tampons, that was it, and then a pad at night. Downside to the tampons is, again, you can have the string showing if you've not, you put the costume on and half the strings hanging out. You can have what's called a moon cup, which I guess for the environmentally friendly people is just a rubber device that you can use. And it's a little bit more eco-friendly. It can last, I think, a couple of hours. You've got no string attached. It is advisable to get change in the shower, take it out in the shower, but it's safe to use, it's reusable, and it's really, really soft and comfortable. But it can look quite terrifying as well, because, I mean, that's it's a really, really strange object. But that's also an alternative to using a tampon. You also have period pants. So period pants for during the day, again. Instead of wearing a pad, I got some bright funky ones here. They're lined so that any menstrual blood that comes through is captured, so you don't have any leaks. You don't have to worry about it going through onto your trousers. Again, they can be washed and reused. And for swimmers especially, because again, if you don't want to wear a tampon or a moon cup, you have sort of swim briefs. So these are ones from Modi Body, and they literally feel like a swimsuit. And again, the sort of bottom part is got that extra padding. So again, it can absorb your menstrual bleed, and you have no worries of any leaks. And I was actually having a look to see whether, I know for Scottish swimmers, 13 and under, we're not allowed technical suits. So I don't know whether you can use some of these actually underneath your regular swimsuit because you don't have to wear a technical suit. I am trying to find the rulings in it. But I do think it would be good if these girls can, because again, some girls miss competitions because they're on their periods or they feel very much exposed. And again, if you're in a costume standing on the blocks, again, you feel exposed. So if you've got something like this underneath, it's very discreet, can be easily hidden underneath your costume. And it just allows you to have that comfort and knowledge that, you know, you're not going to have any leaks or any accidents that's going to bring that negativity back to you.
Is there one of those go on, Kev, go on.
I was just going to kind of, because you mentioned there about obviously, especially when you're in the pool and stuff like that, and for a lot of parents, they're obviously in the gallery. So from a coach's point of view, how have you kind of, in your experience, like you've been on so many different events and probably in camps and things like that, where you've been working with different coaches, what kind of approaches have you seen from a coaching point of view? And obviously there's parent coaches out there as well in terms of managing that. So things that you've seen that have been done really well to like initiate the conversation or at least provide a safe environment for the young females that coaches work with?
I think when the best one I've seen was actually when Alison Schmidt was saying she started her program or her season, and her S&C coach actually sat her down and said, right, do you know roughly what your monthly cycle is like? Like, when do you have it? So she was able to sit with them and plan out when she had her cycle. And he said that he understood. He said if he was there, if she ever needed to talk. However, he was then able to use that information to help plan his sort of training around it. So when she was in certain parts of her season and certain times of her cycle, you know, the mood swings are affected. So he was able to, you know, offer more support vocally, or he knew when to step back. I think knowing as well, saying is that he understood and said, I know what's happening, what's going through. So, you know, don't ever feel embarrassed to, you know, come and talk to me if you're having any issues, or I know, you know, someone who can help if you are stuck. So I think, you know, coaches being upfront and honest and saying, you know, I've been on this course, or, you know, I know a little bit about, if you're ever feeling like you're struggling with your menstrual cycle, just let me know and I can maybe bring in a parent helper, or if there's like a, you know, a child welfare officer you can speak to have on hand. I do think it is possibly a little bit more difficult with a male coach because girls will be a bit more shy and maybe not as willing to be that open. But I think if you've offered them that support network of being like, okay, if you don't want to come to me for help or have any questions, that's fine. Here's, you know, who you can speak to. And it could be, you know, as I say, a child welfare officer, it can be a team manager. You know, dedicate somebody that can be that point of contact for them to go to if they are struggling or they feel they need a bit of help. And again, that person can then be that go-between to kind of bridge that gap in communication. I think yeah, just finding out as much as you can as a coach, and not basically stating I've been on a course and I know all about female health, but saying that you have a general understanding, and saying that you're here to listen, not necessarily tell you what to do, just say I'm here to listen. Again, opening up that communication, I think, is going to be really, really key.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You said there about planning training around cycles. So what sort of effects does it have on girls when they train on their period?
So you have 4 stages. So breaking it down, out of all the 7 hormones that we have, estrogen and progesterone are the 2 key hormones that are influential in the development and growth of a female, and also influences a lot in our menstrual cycle. There are others, as I say, that have an influence, but it's easier to kind of just go on about the estrogen and progesterone. So we call it phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. Fitter Women have been really helpful in their analysis and their data collection on it. And they do have an app. That's probably another area as well for that support. Download the app. It's, whether it's Wild AI is one, and Fitter Women, FITR Women. They have basically an explanation what stage that you're at, what's going on, what's good, what foods you can take on, and what type of training you can do to help manage it. So the 4 stages, you've got your cycle length on average. Girls can have 21 days to 35 days on average. If it's less than 21 days or more than 35 days, I call that your red flag. So that's when your body's a little bit out of balance, and there could be up to 4 things that kind of create that pillar of stability for a regular menstrual cycle. A cycle that happens every month is a sign of a healthy athlete, and a healthy regular cycle just brings on a lot of good positives. So you've got nutrition and hydration, sleep. Any less sleep can create a big impact on recovery, your mood, hormone production, stress as well. Training load as well. If you're going, a whole week of back-to-back VO2 sets, threshold sets, it could be too much. So recovery days are really important, but it's being able to manage it. Training is a stressor, and everyone's got that threshold as to where that stressor line can sit. And if you overcook it, again, that can have a big impact. And the last one is, I'd say we have training load, it's workload. So workload could be school. It could be life situations. It could be some things that are pretty much out of your control. So those 4 pillars are really important. And when it comes to training, you want to try and keep all 4 pillars in mind. So when you're on your period, average is about 5 days. Less, you can have, I think, minimum of 2 days, most 7 days. When I was 14, I was on my period for 14 days. And I wasn't aware that that was a big red flag. I thought that was just normal. I was just maybe a little bit obscure that I was just, on my period longer than most girls. I didn't realize that 7 days was pretty much the maximum. And I probably should have gone and maybe seen a doctor about it. And I did have a lot of issues and problems that came with that. So being on your period is a sign that all hormones are pretty level. Testosterone's a little bit higher up. So positives are being on your period. Girls' pain tolerance actually can be quite high. So you actually can perform quite well on your period. Downsides, mood swings, because again, all the hormones are a bit lower. We rely on serotonin and dopamine to give us that sort of happy hormone hit, and that's going to be flat. So that's when cravings kick in. That's when chocolate and ice cream, all the typical stereotypes that, when a girl's on her period, give her ice cream, give her crisps or whatever. We need that because that's our body's natural way of trying to give us back that sort of hormone, the happy hormone, the serotonin and dopamine hit, because everything is flat. We're having to basically go through this cycle of removing that uterine wall from our womb because we're not pregnant. So there are a couple of positives with it. A couple of things to watch out. Our immune system is also very susceptible on our period. Our white blood cell count is quite low. So staying on top of nutrition is key. Good, healthy food, carbohydrates, making sure that your body can still, because you're quite prone and susceptible for picking up bugs, viruses, because as I say, our defense systems are going to be a bit low. We finish our period, and then we have what's called phase 2. And this is where our estrogen spikes. And this, I quite like it. Fitter Women call it our bulletproof phase. This, if you're wanting to time it within your competition schedule, is the best time. You feel great. Your hormones have picked up. Estrogen is just filling you with all this happy hormones. You feel like unstoppable. Great time for strength and conditioning. You can hit a lot of personal best times. Strength is good. You feel good as well. Your emotions are on a high, so you can take on, things don't bother you, things don't cheese you off. You're a bit more resilient and a bit more susceptible. So a lot of people like being quite happy in that zone. But if you've not been careful and looked after yourself in phase 1, you can be maybe suffering from a cold, and that can kind of bring it down a little bit when you're in phase 2. A couple of things to watch out as well, because you're feeling bulletproof. Couple of hormone levels will be changing again. Appetite might be a little bit less. So, still maintain good food, because if you're going to be training harder, you're going to be burning a lot more fuel. Recovery is key. You can recover pretty quick in this phase, but staying on top of that is going to also be very vital. So support it as best you can. The next phase, so that can last, again, it can vary 4 or 5 days. Some people it can last 10 days. It really depends on that individual. So estrogen is now on its high. We have a small little dip as it comes back up, and we go past what you call ovulation. So our bodies have released an egg. Progesterone now peaks as well. Training wise, you can call it your consolidation phase. You can maintain your training for what you've done in phase 2. Your progesterone will start kind of adding a little bit. You might find that sleep can start to become a little bit more impacted, but it's not too bad. But you're normally pretty similar to phase 2, maybe just a little drop in estrogen. You can tend to get a bit of a cramp on one side, depending on which side your body has released the egg, because you've got 2 ovaries. So you can get like a little bit of a cramp on one side. Phase 4 is when these hormones then start to drop. And it's that withdrawal from the hormones is what kickstarts a lot of, I guess, what's perceived as the negative things about being on your period, the PMS, premenstrual syndrome, and you can get what's called PMDD, which is exacerbated symptoms. Your period should not stop you from being able to do your daily activity. If it does, that's another red flag. So that's when, as I say, something's a little bit out of balance and needs to be addressed. So as the hormones are dropping, sleep's going to become very difficult or a little bit more impacted, because our core temperature increases. Inflammation becomes more prevalent. The reduction in progesterone stimulates kind of an inflammatory response. So taking on anti-inflammatory foods, active cherry is really, really good cherry juice. Omega-3 as well, that can kind of help reduce some inflammation and joints. And yeah, cravings kick in. So the worst thing you can do, like 5 days before you're due to start your period, is have takeaways or high fatty, salty, sugary foods, because that's just going to exacerbate your sort of severe cramping and just the not nice side of having your period. I learnt the hard way between Christmas and New Year about 3 years ago. I went all in at Christmas food-wise. I was Christmas.
Everyone does.
Log. Chocolate log. All the tubes of Pringles and sweets and all the stuff that I know I shouldn't have been eating, but I just kind of thought, I'm going to enjoy it. Literally the day after New Year, I started my period. And I promise you, the cramps I had from it were unbearable. So your nutritional intake can really impact how your body responds and the sort of side effects to being on your period are. So when it comes to your competition schedule, you can perform at any part. So a lot of people think when I'm on my period, I can't train, or, it's clashing with when I'm at a competition. Going into the Tokyo Olympics, I think, there was quite a high percentage of girls who were on phase 4 going into phase 1. So basically about to start their period at an Olympics. So whether you're competing in an Olympic final, whether it's a national final or a district or a club championships, you should still be able to stand behind the block and still be able to perform. Paula Radcliffe, she broke a world record whilst on her period. So being on our period can help. You can still perform. We can still, do our best, but it's about planning it and working what our strategies are. So those 4 pillars: nutrition and hydration, sleep, training load, and stress. If they're all managed, you can have a really smooth cycle and have it quite regular, staying on top of your health, and it'll make you maximize the most out of your training. Mood as well can be really impacted if there's any sort of tweaks to our stress levels or anything like that. That can impact basically how high or how low our hormone level is. So every cycle can be different. So it's really important to try and get it the same. So yeah, planning as best you can be really, really important. But there is a lot of untapped potential you can have within your training. You've got a lot of untapped superpowers. I love calling our cycle like our superpower, because there are some things that you can do if you really tune into it that can really maximize your performance and allow you to enjoy it a lot more, and allow you to be enjoying being a female in sport. So that was a very long-winded answer to your
No, love it.
Hope you got something from that.
I've got so many questions now. I wanted to bring up the fact that obviously periods happen once every month, usually. I read that Emily Seebohm, an Australian swimmer, she didn't have a period for about a year. How's that even possible?
Oh, if I could hold up 12 red flags, I would. That's where your body is being pushed into such a suppressed state that your body no longer produces that high level of estrogen to allow that withdrawal to drop. So it's obviously reaching a lot lower level. That drop is not significant enough to create that body's response. And there's such a lot of damaging things that can happen. You put yourself at higher risk of injury. You're higher risk of bone fractures, muscle tendon tears.
Oh, wow.
Like, it really can impact a lot with not just your menstrual cycle health, but your actual whole physical well-being. You're more susceptible to being ill because it's going to impact your white blood cell count. There are so many things that can really harm you from not having that regular cycle. And that's why it's so important to know that you are having one a month, to know that your body is healthy, to keep it in check. And it's not to scare anybody, but it's to hopefully give you that ownership of being like, right, okay, I've missed it. Obviously, one reason could be, am I pregnant? Hopefully it's not. But if it's not, then that should be an indicator for you to be like, right, there's something that's obviously not in balance in my life, or I might need to go and see a doctor. Because there's also certain conditions that we can have as well. You can have endometriosis, which is where, as I talked about, the PMS symptoms, cramping, like severe tiredness, migraines and stuff, are so severe that they really do just stop you from being able to do anything. So it's not a matter of, oh, just get over it. It's an actual medical condition, which instead of the lining of your womb being formed inside your uterus, it's forming outside of your uterus. And then when it sheds, it's shedding within your body. So it's excruciatingly painful. You've got polycystic ovary syndrome. So there's lots of little conditions that our bodies are telling us if we have them. And it's really important for us to take note, but also for parents as well to take note. So if your child is really, really suffering, could it be one of the 4 things that might be out of balance? But if you feel that they've got a good hold on it, then there might be something medical that might need to be done. And, it's not talked often enough, and it does get dismissed, especially endometriosis for GPs. And a lot of girls do go through many years of suffering. And it really frustrates me. But hopefully the more we can talk about it, the more made aware we can have parents, girls, anybody, even coaches, or if they think that something might be up like that, hopefully, people can be treated a lot sooner and hopefully have a bit of a better quality of life.
Hannah, just to pick up on a point there, and I think especially for the older teenagers out there starting to have, changes in, I guess, their social life and all the other activities that come with being an older teenager.
Yes.
How does methods of contraception kind of factor in on this? Because I know, again, that can affect hormone imbalances. And again, it's a subject that I think perhaps coaches, especially working with teenage girls, might be really uncomfortable talking about, but it's something that, again, every female is going to go through. So what's kind of your experiences of that, or kind of top tips out there when tackling that issue?
Yeah, so again, get your information out there. There are quite a few different types of contraceptive pills. And I guess it depends what you're wanting to use them for. So I was actually put on the pill when I was 15, and that was purely to control my cycle because I was having a horrendous time. 14 days of like really heavy bleeding. I would race and I would literally time it. 3 minutes after my race, I had to be curled up in a ball, hiding in a bathroom or a cubicle somewhere, because it was like someone was constantly stabbing my stomach. I was in so much pain. The cramping was unbearable. So I didn't realize that this was my body telling me that something wasn't right, but I wasn't listening because I didn't have the information. I didn't know. And my parents were obviously worried because they could see that I was suffering and struggling. And at the time, the information was, well, contraception pills allow you to control your periods. So I was put on the pill and I had to go through a couple of different types because certain pills can work well for you and other times it's not because it's synthetic hormones. So you're suppressing your own personal hormones by ingesting synthetic ones. So for, when I had you're on for, 3 weeks or 21 days, and then you take a break for a couple of days to have that bleed. And I used to think that that was my period, but it's not. It's just a withdrawal bleed. It's just your body's natural withdrawing from it. So it's not an actual period when you're on the contraceptive pill. Now, at the age of 15, I think I was told to take a break after 5 years. I don't know, because at 15, kind of rely on your mum and dad to, tell you, or, as an athlete as well, you've got so much other stuff going on. I didn't take that break. So I was on the pill for 15 years and I didn't realize that I've technically not had a period for 15 years. So that was why during lockdown, I was like wide-eyed, being like, oh God, what have I done to my body? So since then, I've come off it. My cycle has actually come through. I've actually embraced what my body is doing, find out what my levels are and how to, engage with it and work with it. And it's actually been a lot better. I feel a lot happier. I feel a lot healthier. First time I've been able to actually put on muscle mass as well, because that's another thing. Having that synthetic hormone can suppress, a little bit more testosterone, which can then impact muscle growth and development. But that's, for some people, they might not have an issue. And as I say, there's different types. You can have a combination pill. You can have progesterone only. You can have estrogen only. That book, Power of the Period, or Period Power by Maisie Hill, is really, really good because, again, it breaks down what happens when you take on these different contraceptive pills. It is, again, a little bit of a taboo because, a lot of people associate contraception with sexual health. And actually, you can use contraceptive pills for performance in a sense of if you are really suffering and struggling, it can be used to sort it. But I would advise being able to seek a sports doctor to make sure that this is the right way for you, because as I say, the health implications, it has to be right for you. Don't seek it out just because it's a quick fix, because what the contraceptive pill can do is can maybe mask some things that are going on that your body's telling you that you might not be addressing. So whilst it might reduce your bleeding, it might reduce the cramps and stuff, but that might be your body telling you you need to add more iron into your diet, or you might need more antioxidants in your diet, or it might be you need more sleep, or you're taking on too much stress. So our bodies are constantly telling us what we need, what we don't need. We've got our cravings, different little things, the subtle signs that our bodies are constantly telling us what we need. We do need to sit and kind of listen to it. And parents as well, your kids the best. So you'll know when things are out of balance, and especially when they're going through those teenage years, hormones are going to be flailing. But you know them instinctively, what's up. So, being able to have those conversations, I think, with them, and, whether you go with them on it or they want to do it on their own, just offer that support. And yeah, I do think sometimes the contraceptive pill can get a bit of a bad rep, but if used in the right way with the right advice, can be beneficial. And it depends. It's purely, an individual scenario with it.
Can I just add one more, point that you made there? And sorry, Dan and Scott, I'm stealing all the questions.
No, go for it.
Go crazy.
Well, you mentioned there around the whole body image thing, and I think that's something for both parents and coaches is a real challenge, because ultimately, as they're training, especially when they're going through those massive growth periods, both guys and girls, actually their bodies are going to change and develop. But actually, that's something that's not talked about hugely, and especially for females going through that growth and development stage, actually it can feel like they're really struggling, but they don't know who to speak to. And for parents and coaches, they might not know what to say, because actually it's a completely normal process, but because there's been no communication like you talked about earlier on it. So again, from your experiences, how's that been managed, both with yourself and other females that you train with, in terms of advice for parents and coaches out there?
I think it depends what's being said around when you've got that sharp improvement. As kids grow, you kind of naturally get better. I remember the days where it's like you can knock off like 10, 15 seconds. And then you suddenly hit a point of being like, well, I'd be happy if I was within 10 to 15 seconds of my PB. There is that shift, but you have like, it could be a couple of months, could be a couple of years where you really have to try and get that mindset, because all of a sudden you've based your performance and success on times, on medals, and then all of a sudden that doesn't happen. And I think it's really, really important that coaches and parents are careful with the language that they use. Like, celebrate the successes of, personal best times and, medals, that's great. But, if we're trying to develop athletes that want to stay in the sport longer, that enjoy what they do, success comes more than just the medals and the personal best. It can be, before they go to a competition, if they've hit that plateau period, sit down with them and say, right, let's focus on a process. Again, it could be from the coach's perspective, instead of focusing on times, focus on a process, especially at the start of the season. Focus on the small little gains, because if these kids are growing, girls, again, can get heavier, which if they're breaststrokers can really mess up their stroke because your form is different going through the water. And if there's so much pressure on time, it just mentally, it really, really makes it hard to enjoy what you're doing, because everything just becomes stressed, it becomes tense. So having other focuses other than time, I think, is really important. And that can be done, as I say, in the club, in the squads, and then reinforced at home. So, if your child hasn't done a personal best time, doesn't matter. The fact that they still turned up, maybe they achieved by not breathing in the last 10 meters of the race, or they aimed to negative split, or some component within the race. And that's when you as well hit that plateau, but you hit that switch of maturity between the junior swimmer to the senior swimmer, because it becomes more than just the times that you produce. The times are a result of all the minute details that you've done in training and in the competitions in the off season. So it can be a really, really tough time. As I say, I don't have a manual being like, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to end up with a happy teenager. It doesn't quite work like that. It is a personal development and growth. But I do think the pressure of expectation on medals and performances, I think, needs to be looked at. And again, that can be through the club. It can be through the support at home. I think if the pressure of times is in the club, then it has to be even more so supportive at home. So not having that pressure of, okay, you've not won a medal, but you know what, you've still done a great job. Did that give you did you give everything at the end of that race? Was there anything you could have improved on? And if it's like, yes, okay, well, let's make sure we go back in the training and do that. It's a fine balance, because obviously you don't want to be that super happy parent that's maybe a bit over the top. But as I say, you guys will know you've got that balance. But it is important to not just purely focus on the medals and the times. They do come, but it does take time and patience. Swimming is probably one of the most old school sports in that training, you can have a really great training session, but you can't expect to see the results from that immediately. It might be 6 weeks, 6 months to a year down the line, as long as you stayed consistent in between. And it's about turning up each day and repeating that great training session that you've done. Even if you have the off days, if the mindset was still good, that's also, a positive win. And, we have instant gratification through text messages. You wait for a reply. You want it instant. If nobody replies back within like 2 hours, it's like, oh, they're ignoring me. We send her an email or a message, we want a response. Nowadays, I think people feel like, you've done a really great training session, right, where's my reward? When actually it takes so much about foundation building and actually having the patience. And especially with that mix of hormones and the different levels and the different times of the cycle that you're in, those emotions can be impacted, and you can feel maybe things are a bit harder. You can be a bit self-critical. So making sure, the girls are talking to themselves in a positive manner, because very, very self-critical, and that in itself can be quite detrimental. So, it's being constructive with the information that you're giving out there, I think, is quite key.
I think as well, I remember listening to Louise Minchin, the BBC Breakfast presenter, and she's come back into sport in her 50s now as a parent. But when she was a teenager, she dropped out of competitive swimming because of body image issues, and actually says, I'm now trying to foster that communication and that positive relationship with the subject, so that when my children hit that stage, they don't then go through the same negative experiences that I had.
Yeah, I think it's being careful of what conversations you have, because it's very easy to sit and critique, being like, "Ooh, oh, they've put on a bit of weight. Oh God, look at the size of her legs. What swimsuit? Oh, that's not very flattering." Little comments like that, especially if you've got your child with you, can be very damaging, because you're critiquing somebody else's appearance out loud, and you don't realize that over time, they then take on of, well, what opinions will people have of me? And then that self-awareness and self-consciousness kind of comes in. And as I say, you become more worried about what other people think, rather than being happy in who you are as an individual and owning it, really. But it's hard, especially when you do have so much of social media stuff kind of being shoved down your throat. So having individuals like who you just mentioned there, I think is really key and really, really important, because body image is huge. And as I say, we are a sport where we are on show, so body image, it can be very, very impactful, especially for a young developing athlete, and that's for both male and female.
Yeah.
I think while we're on the topic of communication as well, we had a question beforehand, which was, my daughter gets embarrassed while on her period and doesn't want to tell her coach, who is male. So what would you suggest? I know we mentioned beforehand different options within the club, but from a parent, how would you suggest you approach that?
I think if the daughter doesn't want to speak to her coach, that's right. She has every right to not tell the coach. That could be up to the parent to maybe notify them, and to give the coach a heads up, and just say, look, just to let you know, she's on her period. So if she's maybe struggling in the training session, or she's a bit quieter, or a bit narky, there's a reason behind it. So if she needs to swim at the back, or if she might need longer recovery, hopefully the coach can then adapt the training session, or just again have that awareness of being like, right, okay, I'm not going to get on that swimmer's case because she's struggling, or something like that. So it could be the parent that might notify, and if obviously you're not going to suddenly parade on poolside being like, you know what, my child's on her period, like out loud. Something just really subtle, whether it's through a text message or seeing the coach face to face. And as well, if there might be certain things that your child does when they're on their period, whether maybe, as I say, they're a bit more quiet, or they bite back a bit more if they don't agree with what you're saying, it also can help the coach maybe have a bit of a heads up, because then it allows them to have that better communication with your child. Again, if there is a child welfare officer on site or team manager, that could help. And if there's not, then maybe speak to the club and ask, could there be somebody on poolside, so that if there is a child who's on a period and is embarrassed, that they do have that kind of point of access to speak to help them feel a bit more comfortable.
We've got a question in the live chat, so I'll bring it up. What brand of menstrual cup would you advise for beginners?
That is a good shout. So the one I showed you was one called Moon Cup. I do have a pamphlet here. There's different types. They all do round about the same. You've got the Diva Cup as well. This is the one that I have as a demo. The company were really, really helpful, and they offered me 2 demos to actually take for girls to see. They have different sizes as well. They can be, as I say, a little bit intimidating. To start with, the price of them might seem quite expensive, but if you think of the long-term benefit from having them, that can, be better if you don't want, again, if you want to save the environment, you don't have to keep rebuying tampons or pads. But I guess I would recommend the Moon Cup. They have an A size and a B size, an A size as a starter and a B size for those who are over 30 or who have gone through a pregnancy as well. So they're a little bit bigger. So there are different sizes out there. Apologies, I don't have any of the other brands to kind of showcase.
That's right. What we will make sure we do is any books or
Yes.
products that Hannah has said in this live stream, we will put them in the description of this video afterwards once it's live, so everyone will have a full resource to everything that was mentioned. Definitely make sure that happens. We've spoken a fair bit, or you spoke a fair bit, about competitions, and there was a question that came in beforehand. So how to cope with monthly cycles at competitions?
So
Because,
this is sorry, I'll let you finish.
Well, it's quite an exposed environment with a lot of eyes on you as a swimmer, so it can be quite tough.
Yep. So I definitely think having a planner, if you have a calendar and you know what competitions you're going to be doing, note down the competitions. Even as a parent, you know, you're going to note, because you guys are chief taxi drivers, so you know you're going to be taking your child to whichever competition that you're going to be going to. But having a planner, I think really, really helps. I know from using, as I say, that Fitter Women app, when I start inputting when I'm on my period, how long it's for, it then starts giving me roughly what my rhythm is. So it starts predicting, okay, you should be starting your period on this date and then on this date, assuming you get your, as I say, those 4 pillars right in between each of your menstruation periods. And it can give you a rough idea. So you can see when your period falls on top of a competition, because with all the goodwill in the world, we cannot control when competitions are put out there. So one thing that we can control is how we prepare going into it. So if you know you're going to be on your period going into a competition, then your sleep is going to be prioritized. Nutrition is going to be prioritized, and making sure you have the products there prioritized. And then as a parent, being extra sensitive with that support, because again, that self-talk, your child's more likely to be talking to themselves a bit more negatively. Visualization is also really good. You know, there are a couple of tools like that that can help. However, not all of them will work. So for one person. So one might work for one person, something else might work for another person. So that's why it's so good that we do have, obviously now with COVID hopefully easing off, competitions should start happening a bit more frequently. You can use the time in between competitions to practice your strategy on how to manage and balance it. Making sure as well, you know, going into a competition, you are prepared with whatever products that you're going to, so you don't get cut short. Having spares in your car, so just in case, you know, if your child is a bit stressed that she might have forgotten, that there is that backup there, so it can ease that stress level a wee bit more as well. Food, making sure that they do eat enough. One of the biggest things that I learned as well, that when you get severe cramping when you're on your period straight after racing, it can be really painful. It's a sign of low glycogen. It's a sign that your body is craving that carbohydrate intake. So having something to have immediately after you've raced, literally I used to have gels in my pocket, and as soon as I come out, once I've grabbed my stuff, I literally would just have a gel. Now there might be some dietitians or nutritionists out there like, no, don't use gels. So again, that was what worked for me. Everyone's got their own kind of what will work, what won't work, but just replenishing that carbohydrate input straight after a race is really, really important, especially when you're on your period. Obviously, don't stuff your face to the point where you can't move and sink when you swim. But it's getting that balance of just replenishing that sugar hit, and that will help reduce that severe cramping if you are getting bad cramping after intense exercise. So yeah.
Is it a thing where you can actually change your periods? Is it a myth that if you get loads of girls together that they can all sync up? Is that have I just made that up, or that's a myth, is it?
That's made up, yeah. It's purely coincidental, because if you've got somebody whose menstrual cycle is 31 days, somebody else who's 28 days, and someone else who's 35 days, they're going to match
Eventually
up at some point.
Right.
You know, the way the mathematics work, they will match up at some point. But yeah, that whole thing of, you know, the moon and syncing up and stuff like that is actually purely a myth. I was shocked because I used to think it was true. But I can tell you it was a myth.
We've had another question in the live chat. I know we covered products kind of right at the start of this live stream, but can this viewer use pads in swimming?
I've yet to come across like specific pads for swimming. So the pads that I use like Always pads. I wouldn't recommend them for swimming because I think they just will de-stick and float away, which isn't ideal. So that's why the period pants do help, because it's an actual item of clothing you get to put on. And I mean, I can try and show you. It probably won't come through because it is dark. Obviously, they haven't been used, so it's still got the tab on. But this part here, sort of around the sort of, there we go, this bit here, the gusset area, is a lot thicker. So it does act like a pad. So if you're not wanting to use a moon cup or a tampon or anything inserted, these are really, really ideal because, again, they can be worn underneath your swimsuit. There are, I think, actual swimsuits as well. I think they are, Modi Body do have like just a full training swimsuit. I know from seeing some of the other young girls, we love our bright costumes. I'm the same. I love bright, funky swimsuits, but some of these suits are very dark. So they can be a little bit boring and a bit plain. So that's why sometimes just having the sort of bikini briefs that you can just wear underneath your training suit means you can still wear your bright, funky swimsuit, and these can stay on underneath, and nobody will none the wiser that you've got them on, and at least you feel happy and safe. So I would recommend something like this rather than an actual stick-on pad, because, as I say, I think they might fall off in the pool.
Like I said, we'll link all of these products before. And if you missed the start of this live stream, don't worry, this video will be up forever on our YouTube channel, free for you to catch up on as well. Kind of a big question. Is there a notable drop-off in participation in between boys and girls at puberty age because of menstrual cycle, do you think?
I remember reading some data from Scottish Swimming where girls, I think we had the highest membership numbers, but then had the highest dropout rate compared to boys. And whether that's due to menstruation is a factor. School pressure as well comes into it too. So yeah, there is a bigger dropout rate for girls compared to boys, and I think it's more than just menstruation. I think there's, as I say, the social pressures, schoolwork, depending on what they're wanting to focus on, and you've got body image, you've got whether they're still enjoying the sport as well. But there does seem to be a bit more of a noticeable dropout for girls compared to boys.
Do you reckon it's worth teaching boys as well as girls about female health and menstrual cycle and stuff like that?
I do. I think it is, because I think the more we normalize it, the less likely they're going to tease. Because I think sometimes the teasing and, making comments and making a joke out of it is possibly because they don't understand. And there is a bit of a naivety through it, because at least if they understood what was going on, they might be a bit more sympathetic, or sorry, not sympathetic, more empathetic. And they might be as well, again, just that understanding, because I think sometimes people make a joke of something if they don't truly understand what's actually happening. So they think, we'll make light of the situation. So yes, I think it would be good, because again, if a girl comes out and she does have blood running down her leg, the worst thing you can do is point and laugh. And especially if it comes from a boy as well. Whereas if a boy just comes over and just says, hey, just to let you know, here's a towel, or you might want to run to the toilet, subtly, because they understand, because it is something that is natural, and it should be viewed as something natural. It happens to every girl. And, there are things that happen with boys that are completely natural as well. And it's just about that topic of conversation to try and normalize it as much as we can. Because as well, there's, certain myths, or not some myths, certain things that get said. Oh, she's on her period. Oh, the moon swings are terrible. Here, have a tub of ice cream. Here, have some chocolate. Oh, she wants wine and flowers. Little stereotypes that normally happen around it. And sure, some of them can be funny, but my partner, Ewan, my fiance, actually, I should say now. Ewan.
Don't want to get that wrong.
I know, soon to be husband. Listen, because he used to be a little bit like that. He used to kind of tease me, and he could never say I was on my period. It was, it was that time of the month then, is it? Or, flying the Japanese flag, or, Red River of Sadness. And, it's like 5,000 euphemisms, and he was trying to find every single one. And, when you're on your period, it's not funny. But if you're not on your period, you can have a little joke. And the more I kind of started going down this journey, learning a little bit more and trying to offer and share my experiences, and also share the education and knowledge, he's understood it as well, and he's a little bit more aware. So he actually can spot the certain things that I do that he goes, you're about to start your period, aren't you? And I'm like, am I? So I look on my app and it's like, oh, funny enough, I am. So he then knows, right, okay, I'm gonna cook, like sea bass for dinner, or let's change your sort of food intake, and because he loves cooking. So, that kind of helps. And I think that support helps, because it's not just teammates as young men going out into the real world once they become adults, and just having that baseline knowledge, I think, will be hugely helpful.
Sounds like he's a keeper.
He is. I'm keeping a hold of him.
I know you run kind of workshops and clinics for swimmers out there. Do you think it's a case of clubs need to look at maybe workshops for guys, for the boys in the squad as well?
Yeah, I mean, Ewan, we were discussing, he wanted to call himself the menstruation man and actually run it in partnership with me, where he would also help deliver it. But actually, from a male's perspective, with living with a female, but actually from his knowledge from, as a young boy and a teenager, and then now that he knows a little bit more about it and how, and I think as well, it would help coming from a male offering that sort of experience. Because again, I think, coming from a female, it just depends. Hopefully we can kind of come in partnership and offer that. I am looking at trying to see if for coaching qualifications, if something like this could be instilled as part of it, not because they need to sign a certificate saying, I know how the female body works. It's, again, just opening up that conversation that this is a very important topic because you're going to be coaching both males and females. And it's really important that as you write the sessions, it is going to be inclusive because guys, their body structure and type is more fast and more explosive. They do take a little bit longer to recover because of that muscle density. Girls, we're a bit more inclined to be more endurance-based, so our recovery is a little bit quicker. However, we can lose muscle a lot quicker. Our adipose subcutaneous tissue, I'm trying to not say fat because a lot of people kind of have a really negative response to fat, but we do have an extra layer of fat on us compared to boys. So again, our buoyancy levels are different. And, there's so many differences, and I think it's being mindful to manage it as well. So if we can get courses, workshops, CPDs, just something that gets that conversation going. But also, I think it would be really good to have discussion groups where you have, right, here's a scenario. How is you as a coach? How would you manage it? And have the conversations and say, well, I would say this. And then we analyze, right, okay, is that the appropriate saying? And, hopefully break down the barriers between male and female coaches within that sort of environment, because as swimmers, it's not just a female sport and it's not just a male sport, it's combined. And I think if we can get on the same page and just expand that knowledge and understanding, hopefully it allows us to have a higher retention of some females in sport and keep more girls on board and try and reduce that dropout rate. And hopefully keep that cycle going. So, if a guy is really fascinated and interesting and wants to help out with that, then that's great. The more we can get on board to pass and share this knowledge and have that communication and offer that topic of discussion, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Quick question from the chat. Do you recommend any supplements to help with fatigue during menstruation?
I don't like recommending supplements as such. Being an ex-athlete, you want to try and get it through diet first before you rely on supplementation, because as an athlete, you are responsible for what goes into your system. But tiredness and fatigue, if our iron levels are low, making sure that we stay on top of iron. You can take iron supplements. You've got spatone, which is like liquid iron, which I think pregnant women take, again for pregnancy, but it's a nice way of getting iron into your system pretty quickly. I actually had a really bad reaction. I was severely anemic when I was younger, and I took iron supplements for that and actually had a very, very bad reaction to it. So I relied on red meat like steak, spinach as well. There's quite a few. Sorry, my brain's going wish. A couple of examples of that, but also being mindful that if you are taking iron, if you follow that up with a food that's got calcium in it, like dairy, cheese, or anything, calcium inhibits the absorption of iron. So for me, I used to love having a steak with a glass of milk, which was possibly the worst thing I could have done because my body absorbed the calcium over the iron. So if you're going to have iron, you want to complement it with something high in vitamin C, and that will allow your body to absorb it much better. So iron in itself will help, again, with energy levels, carbohydrates as well, making sure that you've got good foods, making sure as well it's not too sugary. So, whole wheat foods, keeping that slow release energy. But I think the main cause of fatigue, again, I'm not a nutritionist or, as I say, a health profession. This is based off a little bit of my own experience, but I definitely think if you are fatigued, the key thing possibly will be your iron level. So it might be important to get your blood taken at a doctor's just to find out what those levels are. And if it is a regular GP, what I found was that my levels were normal, and that's great. but as an athlete, you're not normal. It's important to have a little bit more for that higher level, because you're going to be working your body a lot more. Your body requires that red blood cells to go through, and you need that iron to help support oxygen in your body more. So, have a little look into that.
Brilliant. Well, everyone, if no one else has got any more questions, I think that has been a very informative discussion. I've learned tons. How about you two?
Yeah, honestly, loads and loads. I now understand my girlfriend's monthly routine a bit more now. So, yeah, I've learned quite a lot. I have.
Yeah, I think the same. And I think the really interesting bit is coming off the resources and also some of the clips that we'll take from this. Actually, it will start the conversation. And it's not saying this is the end point. This is just that start point for coaches and parents, and for teenage guys that are in groups with teenage girls, to actually start to get that understanding and a line of communication. And then we'll build on it from there. So it's been fascinating, Hannah. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I hope this does start a conversation in households, whether it is with daughters or sons as well. I think that's an equally important message.
Yeah.
Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. Me, Dan, and Kev will be back in a month's time with another topic around swimming parent support. If anyone has any topics that they want us to cover specifically, just drop us a message. We will certainly look into arranging something, or maybe even another interview with a former athlete or parent. If not, everyone, good luck at counties this weekend, because I know they're happening all over the place.
They are.
And yeah, enjoy your weekends.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Kev. Thank you, Hannah. And we'll catch you on the next one, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.